I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to episode 103 of the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about this time, I hope this episode reaches you all in good health, as we know how important that is today. Once again, if you are new to the Speak My Peace podcast, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. Definitely appreciate you tuning into the Speak My Peace podcast, whatever frequency you decide to listen to the Speak My Peace podcast. Please make sure you are commenting, rating, subscribing, all that good stuff, sharing the Speak My Peace podcast with people. It's definitely appreciated, but also just giving me feedback. I love the conversations I have on the topics that I speak about in this podcast, and I welcome more. I want to hear, opinions, whether they differ from mine or not. I love to have these conversations, so thank you all. I'm going to be honest with you all. By the time this episode released, I am going to be on vacation. My vacation probably will be coming to an end around that time. So this is a filler episode. I know I shouldn't be telling y'all that this is a filler episode, but I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be real. This is a filler episode. But with that being said, I like to carry on the conversation that I was having last episode about something else that I've gotten away from. That thing being is Kanye West. I spoke about this in previous episodes as well, but I get a little more into it now. A huge fan of the old Kanye, as we call it. Kanye West in itself is a musical genius, a great artist, one of the greatest producers ever. Even more than that, Kanye West introduced my favorite rapper to me and to the world. Like, if Kanye West didn't put Lupe Fiasco on Touch the Sky, I'm not sure what my introduction to Lupe Fiasco was. I'm not sure if there would have been any introduction to Lupe Fiasco. But Lupe Fiasco is my favorite rapper, and he was introduced to the world on Kanye West's second album. Even aside from that, though, I've always been a big Kanye West fan. It's kind of hard not to be a Kanye West fan. Like, the man makes great music, or made great music up to one point. Where my support shifted from him was probably around the same time I stopped supporting the NFL, if not probably before. I want to send a disclaimer before I even go further into this episode. My opinions and my thoughts have nothing to do with his mental state, or it probably does. Now that I think about it, it probably does have something to do with his mental state, but I'm not attacking him for his mental state. I should say, that's my disclaimer. I'm not attacking Kanye because of his mental state. I'm attacking him because of just how wild he is and the verbiage he uses. So let's just say that by the time this episode releases, I'm going to be on vacation, but also that same week, he is releasing an album, which is going to generate a lot of buzz. For the past couple months, he's been generating a lot of buzz, just been in the media, with his public divorce and his child custody and his ex-wife dating and all these other type of different things. He's been in the public a lot recently, even with his new relationship or wherever. I don't know if that's a relationship or just like a marketing attacker or a marketing employee, whatever the case may be. But he's been in the media a lot. So I can only imagine that's going to be amplified in between the time that I'm recording this podcast and the time this podcast releases. Because by the time this podcast releases, he is going to have released another album on all days but my birthday. Like, why my birthday? Like, choose any other day. But anyways, let's get back to the origins of how I got here. So I don't remember if you all remember around the time, I want to say maybe 2015, 16, when that idiot was running for president, or if he was already president, and Kanye was aligning himself with that man. I have no problem with people supporting that man. It doesn't affect me one way or another. Y'all know I don't feel inclined to partake in presidential elections. And so whoever people support doesn't affect me, but who people support says a lot to me about those people. And so around this time that Kanye was kind of aligning with this man and running with this man, he was making some very disparaging remarks at the expense of our people. He had the famous rant at TMZ where Van Lathan stood up to him. He went down to Howard University and was spewing some very disparaging remarks about our ancestors in front of group of 20-year-olds, and he just had this like this national tour of making a mockery of our history. And I just couldn't stand for it. Like, it's one thing, like I spoke about in the last episode, my integrity would not allow me to allow people to disrespect my ancestors, to disrespect my people, disrespect my family, and I still openly support them. Now, some people, they say separate the music from the person and you will be all right, in which, in most part, I agree with, because I've done that millions of times. Fine China is one of my favorite R&B. It's really a pop song. Really one of my favorite pop songs in the past probably 10 years. That's a song by Chris Brown. Chris Brown, we know what happened with Rihanna. He's a domestic abuser at the hands of women. And many other artists as well. Chris Brown was just the one that came up to my mind because that's probably like one of the most significant of them all, because Fine China is really a great song. I don't know why that song is so good, but Fine China is literally like one of my favorite songs in the past 10 years. That's beyond the point. People say separate the artist from the music and you'll be all right, in which I agree. But I think that comes at a cost when it comes to me feeling like I'm then disrespected. Among these rants, I'm not going to get into the statements that he was making himself. You all can Google what those statements he was making. But it was against black people. And in that moment, I felt like he was making these remarks to appease a certain crowd that don't look like him, a certain crowd that don't look like me, and a certain crowd that don't look like y'all or have the interests that y'all have. You being my listeners, I have an idea of what interests you all have. And I felt like he was making these comments at our expense, like basically making a mockery of us, trying to erase I guess what he was trying to do was change the narrative or shift the narrative in how slavery was thought and how our ancestors' mental states were and during this time of slavery and all these things like that. I guess that's what he was attempting to do, but he didn't do that. What he did is he made a mockery of us, and people laughed at us because of that. People laughed at him because of that. But in that moment, I knew that I could no longer support that man until he recanted any of those statements, because they were disparaging. Like, how can I find myself listening to a man's music knowing that he is doing this, basically shucking and jiving? That's what we call it. He's doing a lot of shucking and jiving for those folks. And I'm going out and I'm still streaming his music and I'm buying his clothes and I'm buying his shoes. I feel like an idiot. I'm gonna be straight up with y'all. I would feel like an idiot continuing to support that man. And so I just chose not to. Like, the last album I listened to of Kanye West was The Life of Pablo, which was The Shift. After that happened, or during the time that happened, or during the time that released, was when he started going on with what he had going on. And I just had to separate myself from that. I'm not saying I haven't supported him at all, because I've definitely listened to albums that were released on Good Music, his label. I've definitely listened to albums that had his production, which would generate to his revenue. But I haven't blatantly said, oh, Kanye West is, aligned with this, or Kanye West has some type of involvement in this, let me listen to this. I've stayed away from that because of those reasons. I feel like we as black people, we have a difficult experience within itself, and we don't need people making a mockery of what we've come from and what we're striving for at our expense. Like, it's already an uphill battle from the time that we're brought into this world from the jump. So why continue, or why contribute to that when you look like us, when you come from the neighborhoods that we come from, when you come from the backgrounds that we come from? It didn't make sense to me. And so in that moments, I decided to never support that man again. The reason why I bring this up is because I rehashed it thinking about me speaking about my alignment with the NFL last episode, and then with him having an album releasing the week of my birthday and the week that this episode is going to be released. Again, I said the disclaimer that I don't want to make it seem like I'm attacking his mental state, because I think we all can look at Kanye or see his behavior since his mom passed away. that he hasn't all been there, or I'm not gonna say he hasn't because I can't make that assumption. I'm not a doctor, but it appears that he hasn't been there at times. And if he's had instances and he had ramblings and he had things where it was like, this man does not seem okay. But what really pissed me off and what really made me mad is he went on that whole run of making a mockery of our history, of our ancestors, of our people, of us. And then he got low for a little while and he came back a Christian, a born again Christian. And literally everybody forgot what he had did in the previous months. But I never did. But really that pissed me off because when he came back a born again Christian, told everyone he was stepping away from secular music, everyone was like, oh my, Kanye, he's the greatest. And oh, it's a new Kanye. And in the back of my mind, and there was a lot of black people that had the reactions that I'm imitating or mimicking. There was a lot of black people. Like a lot of black people I know are fans of the past 3 or 4 Kanye albums that have been non-secular. Me personally, I just can't align with that. I'm not telling y'all to do one thing. I'm not telling y'all not to do one thing. I'm just telling y'all my internal battles. I just can't do that. Like you don't get to do what you did, step away, get low, and then come back and reinvent yourself and then not have to account for all the damage you did before you stepped away. Like we have to be accountable for our actions. He has to answer to all the BS that he was spewing during that time. Because we already have a certain type of people who spew these type of messages and they are not accounted for. And then when we have our own people, someone who we look at as a hero, someone who we look like as a pillar in our communities, then sharing those same ideologies. I don't know why that word is so hard for me to say just now. But when we have someone who looks like us and one of our own people sharing those same ideologies, it just doesn't sit right with me. Another reason why I bring this up and the reason why I rehash just memories and rehash things like that is because along with the album he has releasing, he also has a documentary on Netflix releasing, which will be my first time breaking this stance and supporting him. Because I'm interested. I'm interested to see the story. Like me personally, I'm a big fan of documentaries. I'm a big fan of real life stories because I can relate. But I also just like to see the underdog story. I like to see it play out on the big screen. I like to see it play, like the majority. Like I don't read a lot of books, but I try to read a lot of books. But the majority of books I read, they are about real life stories. And that's what I like to see. Like the TV shows that I watch, majority of them are based on real life stories, but actually they're obviously fictionalized because they're on TV. But I attach to them because I've either seen those situations play out or I've heard those stories before. And so now it's something that I can get behind, and I know that this was like, even though this didn't exactly happen, something like this has happened. And I love things like that. I like when I connect with things on a real level. And I say all that to say that I want to see this 3-part documentary about his life, because Kanye West has been a pillar in hip hop for the past 2 decades. And while he's spoken openly about his journey to get to where he was at, we haven't seen it. And so to hear that the majority of the journey has been documented, it's amazing to me. Again, I'm breaking my stance just for this one thing, and I feel terrible about it, but I just want to see it. Y'all forgive me. I just want to see it. After that, I'm going to go back to not support this man unless he comes back out and, answers for those statements he was making. But I'm just very curious into seeing what that looked like. I think that's the end of my rant. Y'all know how much I hate not preparing for episodes. And this is one of those episodes I didn't prepare for. I literally just came out here and I spitballed, and here we are 15 minutes later. But then again, I did tell y'all this is a filler episode. But no, at the end of the day, we have principles as human beings, and we have to stand on them. And this is the principle that I'm standing on. Granted, I'm breaking a principle for that one thing, but this is why I have been where I have been for the past couple of years, and my stance on him and my stance on the NFL. I personally just won't tolerate that disrespect. And I feel like if I did it and if I allowed it, I would feel like a lesser version of myself. And so I can't do that. I hope that he cleans up those statements that he made in the past, but it's been so many years and so many things that have happened since then that he probably doesn't remember it. But because of that, my relationship with him as an artist that I've known and loved for so many years is forever going to be strained because of that. And it's not like he cared. And the only reason why I'm detailing this here is because this is an artist that I really love, like, and have loved for so many years. And it breaks my heart that I just can't support him because he was out here acting a damn fool at our expense. That's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week. As I told y'all, this episode is going to be released while I'm on vacation. So I will speak to y'all soon. When I get back, we're going to be right back to the regularly scheduled program. We're going to get out these good episodes. Hope y'all continue to enjoy the rest of this Black History Month. Do something to commemorate it. Educate yourself. Inform yourself, wherever the case may be. Just go out and do it. I'm going to continue to break these principles as I close out this episode because my what to watch for this week, by the time this episode releases, is going to be out. So watch jeen-yus, the 3-part documentary on Kanye West on Netflix. It should be out by the time this episode releases. Hopefully we can have further conversations about this or about my stance or just about him in general. I am open to it. Feel free to DM me. Feel free to leave comments under the podcast. Feel free to leave ratings on the episode, wherever the case may be. I'm open to all these conversations. Once again, that's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week. I'm out.